So President Obama and the First Family are doing a historic visit to Cuba right now. It's the first time in 88 years that an American president has been on Cuban soil. So people on the left generally like this, myself included. People on the right, of course, don't. But I want to give you guys an angle of the story that very few outlets are reporting on, even though, to me, this is incredibly important, and it's something that shows you what diplomacy can offer in the long run. So Huffington Post explains here, quote, "One of the most exciting things about the thawing of relations between Cuba and the U.S. is happening stateside right now. The possibility of clinical trials on a drug to prevent lung cancer and possibly other cancers too. Simovax, which is both a treatment and vaccine for lung cancer, has been researched in Cuba for 25 years and free to the Cuban public since 2011. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's trade mission to Cuba in April 2015 resulted in a signed agreement to bring Simovax to the U.S. A 2007 study of patients with stages 3B and 4 lung cancer, published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology, confirmed the safety of the Simovax and showed an increase in tumor-reducing antibody production in more than half of cases. It proved particularly effective for increased survival if the study participant was younger than 60. Now, as if that's not enough, the shot is incredibly cheap. They continue here. Each cost the Cuban government just $1. Studies have found there are no significant side effects. So what this means, guys, is because we decided to do diplomacy, because we're moving in the direction of creating a relationship as opposed to isolating Cuba and punishing them and trying to change the regime that way, there are mutual benefits. So obviously we can do our best to try to bring a better human rights record to Cuba and try to make it so they stop cracking down on dissidents and have more free expression and free speech and a free press and all that stuff. But also, it's not like, hey, they haven't done anything positive ever and they have nothing to offer us and there's no benefit for us. No, they developed a lung cancer vaccine that works. They're already using it in Europe. They haven't had this standoffish relationship with Cuba like we have for all this time. So they've been doing trade and they've been, having negotiations and talks for a very long time. They've been doing diplomacy. So they did their own trials there, and they came to the same conclusion. They're like, no, it works. We know it works. Now, understand that the way the system works in the U.S., it still needs to be tested by the FDA, which is understandable. It should have to be. And then there's a process, and then, okay, now we can have it X amount of years in the future or whatever it is. But bottom line is, if it wasn't for our relationship with them, we wouldn't have gotten this. And as a direct result of the diplomacy, we now have the potential to have a lung cancer vaccine in the U.S. that we didn't have before. So this is what happens when you're willing to just talk. That's it. And for the record here, I'm not saying, hey, we should be best friends with them and we're allies now and we're buddy-buddy. No, I'm a big guy in favor of neutral relationships. I've said it before about Israel, how us and Israel are too close and we look the other way as they do occupation and oppression and apartheid. Well, we can have a more neutral relationship with them. For example, stop giving them billions of dollars in subsidies, stop giving them, countless weapons, and have a more neutral relationship. So every once in a while, help each other, sure, help each other. But it should be more neutral. I say the same thing with Saudi Arabia, a Wahhabi terror state. And since they're our oil butt buddy, they can get away with anything and we look the other way. No, let's do a more neutral relationship. Untangle it a little bit, be more neutral. Because they have done horrific human rights abuses and we should recognize that and that should factor into how we treat them. Same thing with Cuba. I'm not saying, hey, let's be buddy-buddy and hold hands and frolic in the meadow together. No. Understand that they are a communist regime. They do suppress human rights. They don't have free speech and free expression, and that should factor into how we treat them. That doesn't mean totally standoffish, never say anything with them. It means have a neutral relationship. Every once in a while, hey, you have a lung cancer vaccine? Hey, we have this thing you want? Okay, let's take care of it. Let's do diplomacy, and then we'll move forward. That's all I want, and I think that's all most liberals want. I think people have to do a better job of balancing human rights abuses and all the negative things that a given state might do, with potential upsides to just talking with them and every once in a while cutting a deal for something that's overwhelmingly positive, like, hey, they created a lung cancer vaccine that we don't have. We have people that get lung cancer. Well, how about we cut some sort of deal where, we can benefit from this? So for all the Republicans who are just totally against anything, no, can't even talk to Cuba, can't look at Cuba, continue the embargo, keep the sanctions on, and all this stuff. Fine, that's your position, but just know that if we used your mindset and your philosophy and your ideology and we kept that in place, Cuba would not change at all, because they haven't, and we wouldn't get any mutual benefits from diplomacy too.